Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the shadowy corners of the human mind. The places where psychology isn't just about understanding yourself, but about understanding how people can be influenced, manipulated, and outmaneuvered. These aren't parlor tricks or party games. They're the same tools used by advertisers, politicians, and master persuaders every single day. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. So before you settle in, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the kind of deep dives I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I'm always fascinated by how this community stretches across time zones and corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan or pour yourself something warm, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's begin with the most underrated trick, the two-system mind. Your brain is not designed for the modern world. It evolved over millions of years to handle immediate threats and simple choices. Yet today you're bombarded with complexity it was never built to process. Understanding this mismatch is your first line of defense. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, revealed a profound truth about how your brain operates. You don't just have one mind. You have two. Not in the sense of multiple personalities, but in terms of processing systems. System 1 is your fast, automatic, intuitive mode of thinking. It's the part of you that instantly recognizes a friend's face in a crowd, that quickly sizes up whether someone seems trustworthy, or that makes you slam on the brakes when a car swerves in front of you. System 1 is survival-oriented. It's fast because, for most of human history, fast meant alive. You couldn't sit down and analytically calculate whether the rustling in the bushes was a predator. You either ran or you didn't. System 2, by contrast, is your slow, deliberate, logical processor. It's what you engage when solving math problems, writing an essay, or carefully weighing the pros and cons of a big life decision. System 2 is thorough but lazy. It requires conscious effort and drains mental energy, so your brain avoids using it unless absolutely necessary. Here's the shocking part. About 95% of your daily decisions are handled by System 1. That means the vast majority of what you do, what you buy, how you respond, who you trust, is governed by snap judgments and unconscious shortcuts. This is why advertisers, political campaigns, and manipulators target your intuition, not your reason. They know your default setting is automatic. Your defense isn't to distrust System 1 completely. You need it, but to know when to flip the switch and engage System 2. When stakes are high, when consequences ripple far into the future, or when you notice a surge of emotion clouding judgment, that's when you must pause, slow down, and activate deliberate thinking. Choice architecture awareness. Step into any environment, supermarket, social media platform, or even your phone's settings, and you're already inside a carefully designed system of influence. This design is called choice architecture. The term comes from behavioral economist Richard Thaler, who showed that the way choices are presented can radically shift what people pick. Consider the grocery store checkout line. Candy and gum aren't placed there accidentally. They're at arm's length because the store knows you're tired, distracted, and primed for impulse. The environment nudges you toward grabbing one more item without thought. Look at digital platforms. Why do apps have default settings that encourage constant notifications? Because they know defaults are powerful. Most people don't bother changing them, so the platform wins more of your attention. Even something as simple as the order of menu items or the way subscription tiers are displayed is a form of manipulation. The defense isn't paranoia, it's awareness. When you walk into an environment, pause and ask, what decisions are being made easier for me? Which ones are being made harder? Who benefits from this layout? Once you start seeing the invisible architecture of choice, you can reclaim control. Instead of being nudged unconsciously, you consciously choose whether to follow or resist. The planning fallacy shield. Imagine you're asked to estimate how long it'll take you to finish a work project. You feel confident. 2 weeks, maybe less. 3 weeks later, you're still buried in it. Sound familiar? That's the planning fallacy at work. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky showed that humans consistently underestimate how long tasks will take and overestimate their ability to stay on track. We tell ourselves the optimistic story. This time will be different. This time will be more disciplined. Reality, of course, disagrees. History offers countless examples. Massive infrastructure projects, bridges, tunnels, IT systems, almost always cost more and take longer than promised. Personal goals, like getting in shape, writing a book, or saving money, follow the same pattern. Optimism bias blinds us to the obstacles, interruptions, and complexities that inevitably arise. Your shield against the planning fallacy is reference class forecasting. Instead of trusting your gut estimate, look at how similar projects have gone in the past. If most software rollouts in your company took 6 months, why should yours magically finish in 3? If your last 5 gym streaks fizzled after 2 months, what makes this one immune? The evidence of history is more reliable than the optimism of your imagination. Temporal discounting recognition. Your brain is wired to prefer now over later. If I offer you $100 today or $120 next month, most people grab the $100. That's temporal discounting, or, more specifically, hyperbolic discounting. Immediate rewards feel disproportionately valuable, while future rewards feel vague, distant, and ignorable. This wiring made sense in an environment of scarcity. When food was rare and survival uncertain, it was rational to eat the berries you found today rather than gamble on finding more tomorrow. But in the modern world, this instinct sabotages you. It explains why credit card debt feels manageable. You get the product today, while the pain of repayment is months away. It's why saving for retirement feels optional. You get more pleasure from spending today, and the future version of you seems like a stranger. Marketers exploit this by offering instant gratification. Buy now, pay later. Defense comes from collapsing the distance between present and future. Vividly imagine your future self. Picture the stress of monthly bills piling up, or the relief of financial freedom at retirement. Translate abstract consequences into concrete images. By making the future feel emotionally real, you balance your decision-making toward long-term wisdom. The paradox of choice navigation. We think more choice means more freedom. In reality, too much choice paralyzes. Barry Schwartz called this the paradox of choice. He demonstrated that when people are presented with dozens or hundreds of options, they often make no decision at all, or, if they do, they feel less satisfied afterward. Consider the supermarket jam study. Shoppers confronted with 300 varieties bought less jam than those offered just 24. Why? Because too many options overwhelm System 2 and exhaust System 1. Instead of feeling liberated, people feel trapped in analysis paralysis. What if I choose wrong? What if there's a better option? This effect creeps into modern life constantly. Endless Netflix titles, thousands of dating profiles, infinite product variations online, all promise choice but deliver anxiety. The defense is pre-filtering. Instead of comparing everything, decide on your criteria up front. Narrow the field before you even start looking. Want a car? Decide on budget, fuel type, and must-have features first, then ignore everything outside that range. By pruning choices early, you reduce paralysis and increase satisfaction. Decision fatigue immunity. Every decision costs energy. The more choices you make, the more depleted your mental resources become. This is decision fatigue, a phenomenon backed by Roy Baumeister's research on ego depletion. One striking study examined parole decisions by judges. In the morning, approval rates were high. By late afternoon, approvals plummeted. The difference wasn't the quality of cases, it was the judge's mental energy. They defaulted to the safer no when depleted. The same happens to you. After a long day, you're more likely to eat junk food, skip workouts, or accept whatever default your environment presents. Decision fatigue explains why you're productive in the morning but exhausted by evening. Your defense is to structure your day to protect your decision-making capacity. Handle your most important choices early, when your mind is sharp. Automate low-stakes decisions: what you wear, what you eat, what routine you follow. This is why Steve Jobs wore the same outfit daily and why elite performers reduce trivial choices. They conserve mental energy for what matters most. When you notice yourself feeling depleted, snapping at small things, struggling to focus, defaulting to easy options, recognize it as a signal. Don't make life-altering choices in that state. Rest, recharge, and return with System 2 ready to engage. The sunk cost awareness. Imagine you've spent 3 years building a business. It's draining your finances, consuming your time, and pulling you away from family. Deep down, you know the numbers don't add up. Yet walking away feels unthinkable. Why? Because you've already invested too much. This is the sunk cost fallacy, the irrational attachment to past investments. Your brain resists admitting that time, money, and effort already spent are gone forever. The thought of abandoning them feels like declaring defeat. So you keep throwing good resources after bad, hoping to justify the past. You see it in failing relationships, where people say, "But I've already invested 5 years. I can't just leave." You see it in gamblers chasing losses, convinced the next hand will redeem them. You see it in companies continuing doomed projects because executives fear admitting mistakes. The defense is brutally simple, yet emotionally difficult. Ask yourself, if I were starting fresh today, would I choose this path? That question detaches you from past costs and forces you to evaluate based only on future potential. The past is unrecoverable. The future is still negotiable. Opportunity cost thinking. Every decision hides a shadow price, the cost of what you didn't choose. Economists call this opportunity cost. Yet most people rarely consider it. They focus only on what they gain, not what they sacrifice. Spend 3 hours binge-watching television. The cost isn't just 3 hours gone. It's 3 hours you could have spent reading, exercising, building a skill, or nurturing a relationship. Choose one career path. You also chose not to pursue every other path. Money spent on a new gadget? That's money you can invest, save, or spend elsewhere. The tragedy is that ignoring opportunity cost leads to poor allocation of your most precious resources: time, energy, and attention. It's why so many people look back on years of trivial pursuits and wonder where their potential went. The defense is a constant awareness practice. Before committing, pause and ask, what else could I do with these same resources? You'll often find the hidden trade-off is more valuable than the apparent gain. This mindset doesn't paralyze, it clarifies. It ensures you're choosing the path with the highest return, not just the most convenient. The endowment effect defense. Suppose you buy a coffee mug for $5. The next day, someone offers you $6 for it. Most people refuse. Why? Because the moment you own something, you value it more highly than before. This is the endowment effect. Richard Thaler, who coined the term, showed that people demand more money to give up an item they own than they would have paid to acquire it. Ownership inflates perceived value. That's why homeowners often overprice their properties, because to them, it's not just a house, it's their house. Marketers exploit this bias. Real estate agents ask you to imagine living in the house during a tour. Car dealerships encourage test drives to create a sense of psychological ownership before you buy. Once you feel it's yours, parting with it seems painful, even if it's not worth the price. The defense is ruthless objectivity. Evaluate everything at market value, not sentimental value. Ask yourself, if I didn't already own this, how much would I pay for it today? If the answer is less than what you could sell it for, your attachment is costing you. Detachment brings clarity. Status quo bias recognition. Humans cling to the familiar. This tendency, status quo bias, keeps people locked into suboptimal routines, outdated products, and even toxic environments. Think of insurance policies. Many people keep paying for plans that no longer fit their needs, simply because switching feels like effort. Investors hold underperforming assets rather than reallocating to better ones. Employees stay in unfulfilling jobs for years because the pain of change feels greater than the pain of staying. The irony is that inertia often costs more than change. But the brain is wired to overestimate the risks of leaving the status quo while underestimating the risks of staying. Comfort disguises itself as safety. Your defense is systematic auditing. Regularly review your defaults, your subscriptions, investments, relationships, and routines. Ask, if I weren't already doing this, would I start today? If the answer is no, the status quo is trapping you. Break the illusion of permanence and reclaim the freedom to pivot. Mental accounting awareness. Money is money, fungible, interchangeable, equal in value regardless of source. Yet your brain doesn't treat it that way. This irrational separation is called mental accounting. Consider this. Someone refuses to spend $20 cash on a book, but happily uses a $20 gift card. Or they treat tax refunds as bonus money, splurging freely while guarding their salary tightly. Casinos thrive on this bias by converting dollars into chips. Suddenly, the same money feels less real, making losses easier to tolerate and wins more thrilling. The same effect shows up in budgeting. People may splurge from their vacation fund while struggling to pay down credit card debt, forgetting that money spent from any source reduces overall wealth. The defense is unification. Treat all money as identical, no matter its origin. Before spending, strip away labels and ask, if this were plain cash, would I still spend it this way? The more you collapse mental categories, the more rational your financial choices become. The commitment device strategy. Humans are terrible at resisting temptation, but we are excellent at designing traps for our future selves. These traps, known as commitment devices, allow your rational self to outsmart your impulsive self. The classic story is Odysseus. Sailing past the Sirens, whose song lured sailors to destruction, he ordered his crew to tie him to the mast and plug their ears with wax. He knew his future self would be powerless, so he prepared in advance. Modern life offers countless parallels. Automatic savings transfers remove the temptation to spend. Website blockers keep you focused during work hours. Gym contracts force you to commit financially to your health. Even asking a friend to hold your credit card before shopping is a commitment device. The defense strategy here is proactive design. Don't wait until temptation strikes. Set up structures when your rational mind is in control. Your environment should make good choices frictionless and bad choices costly. Commitment devices are not signs of weakness. They're the ultimate act of foresight. The mere exposure effect shield. Influence is everywhere, from the moment you wake up until you fall asleep. Your phone notifications, news headlines, advertising messages, social interactions, they're all designed to shape your thoughts and actions. The question isn't whether you'll be influenced, but whether you'll be aware of it. Think about the last time a song annoyed you the first time you heard it, but after it kept playing on the radio, it grew on you. That's not a change in taste, it's psychology at work. Robert Zajonk's research in the 1960s showed that simply being exposed to something repeatedly increases your preference for it. This is called the mere exposure effect. You don't need to consciously notice the repetition. In fact, people exposed to Chinese characters they didn't understand consistently preferred the ones they'd seen before, even if they didn't remember seeing them. Familiarity breeds comfort, and comfort often gets mistaken for quality or truth. Marketers rely heavily on this effect. That's why logos are plastered everywhere, jingles repeat endlessly, and political slogans echo across campaigns. Even if you think you're ignoring them, your subconscious is quietly building familiarity, and with it, preference. The defense is to ask yourself, do I like this because it has genuine value, or because I've simply seen it many times? Familiarity should never be confused with merit. Awareness of the mere exposure effect lets you step back and separate real preference from artificial comfort. The halo effect recognition. First impressions are powerful, but not always accurate. The halo effect describes how one positive trait spills over into unrelated judgments. If someone is attractive, we assume they're intelligent. If a company is profitable, we assume all their products are high quality. Celebrity endorsements are built on this bias. A famous athlete might sell you a watch, even though athletic talent has no bearing on timepiece design. Warren Buffett's brilliance in investing makes people trust his opinions on unrelated topics like public policy or climate change. The glow of one's strength illuminates everything else. The danger is that the halo blinds you to flaws. A charismatic leader might convince you they're also ethical. An elegant product design might hide poor durability. A friend's humor might overshadow their unreliability. Your defense is compartmentalization. Evaluate each trait independently, resisting the urge to let admiration in one domain color judgment in another. Acknowledge the halo effect and ask, if this person or product didn't have this one impressive quality, how would I judge the rest? That question strips away the glow and forces objectivity. Priming vulnerability awareness. Imagine walking into a bakery filled with the smell of fresh bread. Without realizing it, you feel warmer, more comfortable, even more generous. This is priming, when subtle environmental cues shape thoughts, feelings, and behaviors outside of awareness. Psychological experiments reveal startling examples. Students exposed to words related to old age walked more slowly afterward. People asked trivia questions in a quiet library performed better than those in a noisy cafeteria. Restaurants playing French music see more French wine sales. None of these participants consciously noticed the influence. Marketers, architects, and even governments use priming deliberately. Supermarkets pipe in upbeat music to encourage lingering. Casinos design layouts with no clocks or windows to stretch playtime. Political campaigns use background symbols, flags, eagles, strong words, to trigger unconscious associations. The defense isn't to eliminate all priming. You can't, but to recognize environments that may be manipulating your mindset. Ask, how might this setting be nudging me? Awareness pulls invisible strings into the light, giving you back control. The Benjamin Franklin effect understanding. Logic suggests that if you do someone a favor, you'll like them less because they owe you. But Benjamin Franklin noticed the opposite. When he asked a rival legislator to lend him a rare book, the rival obliged and became more friendly afterward. This is the Benjamin Franklin effect. The psychological engine is cognitive dissonance. If I help you, my brain reasons, then I must like you. Otherwise, why would I bother? To resolve the contradiction, I unconsciously adjust my attitude to match my action. This effect makes small favors powerful. Once someone helps you once, they're more likely to help again and with larger requests. Manipulators exploit this by starting with tiny asks, signing a petition, answering a survey, or lending a small amount of money. Each, yes, lays groundwork for bigger commitments. Defense means recognizing when incremental favors are being used as influence tools. Before agreeing, ask, where could this lead? Am I being nudged down a path I wouldn't choose if I saw the end point? Awareness protects you from being guided by your own good nature. Social proof verification skills. You walk into a restaurant and see a line out the door. Instantly, you assume the food must be good. That's social proof in action. Our tendency to look to others when deciding how to act, especially in uncertain situations. Social proof explains why laugh tracks make TV shows feel funnier, why most popular product labels boost sales, and why online reviews guide purchases. It's deeply wired. Following the crowd once meant safety in numbers. But in the digital age, social proof can be manufactured. Companies buy fake reviews. Political movements create bot-driven grassroots campaigns, and influencers inflate follower counts. What looks like genuine consensus may be engineered illusion. Defense requires verification. Don't just trust the volume of voices. Check the sources. Are reviews from verified buyers? Are testimonials specific or generic? Does the consensus come from independent individuals or a concentrated cluster? Train yourself to look past the surface appearance of popularity and ask, is this crowd real or staged? Authority figure analysis. In the 1960s, Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments shocked the world, literally. Participants, instructed by an experimenter in a lab coat, believed they were administering painful electric shocks to others. Despite hearing screams, many continued, simply because an authority figure told them to. This revealed a sobering truth. People defer to authority, often against their own moral judgment. And in modern life, authority is constantly borrowed or fabricated. An actor in a doctor's uniform sells medication on TV. A business card with an impressive title confers credibility. Official-looking websites with seals and logos push misinformation. The defense is twofold. Verify expertise and remember that real authority welcomes scrutiny. Ask, does this person have actual qualifications in this area, or just the appearance of authority? A cardiologist may be an expert on heart health, but not on stock market predictions. Respect legitimate authority, but never surrender independent judgment. The foot in the door recognition. You're asked to sign a small petition about environmental conservation. Harmless, right? Weeks later, the same group asks you to donate money or volunteer time. Because you already said yes once, you're far more likely to agree again. This is the foot in the door technique. Psychologists discovered that people who agreed to display a tiny window sticker supporting road safety were significantly more likely later to allow a large billboard on their lawn. Why? Because we crave consistency. Once we commit, even in small ways, we align future behavior with that commitment. This principle underlies multi-level marketing, subscription traps, and even manipulative relationships. The first ask is always small. Answer a survey, try a free sample, attend a short meeting. But each step lays psychological groundwork for a much bigger yes. The defense is foresight. Before agreeing to a small request, ask, what's the logical next step after this? Would I still say yes if I knew where it was heading? Recognizing the foot in the door keeps you from opening it all the way. Reciprocity trap detection. The drive to reciprocate is so deeply ingrained in human psychology that it operates almost like a reflex. Anthropologists trace it back to survival. In small tribes, mutual exchange of resources and favors meant the difference between life and death. If someone shared food with you, you were more likely to survive. And if you didn't return the favor later, you risked exclusion from the group. Over time, this instinct hardened into one of the most reliable behavioral levers ever discovered. But this strength can be weaponized. Modern marketers, salespeople, and even political operatives have learned to manufacture a sense of obligation through calculated generosity. Free samples at the grocery store are rarely just free. That complimentary pin from a trade show, the surprise gift tucked into your package, the small act of service offered by a salesperson, all of these plant a seed of debt in your subconscious. What makes the reciprocity trap so powerful is that you don't need to like the person or even want what they're offering. The debt still sticks. Studies show that restaurant diners who receive a mint with their bill tip significantly more, even though the mint itself has almost no value. It's not the object, it's the act. Defense requires drawing a sharp line between genuine generosity and calculated manipulation. True generosity carries no strings attached. When the gift is clearly tied to an expectation of return, whether it's a purchase, a vote, or your time, you can mentally reframe it not as kindness, but as an investment someone is making in you. And when you see it that way, the invisible debt dissolves. Scarcity versus artificial urgency. Scarcity is one of nature's most reliable signals of value. A rare fruit in the wild, a limited source of water, a partner who is highly sought after. Scarcity meant survival advantages. Our brains evolved to treat scarce things as inherently valuable. But in the modern world, scarcity can be faked. Retailers exploit this daily. Only 2 seats left at this price. Sale ends in 3 hours. Limited edition. These phrases are carefully designed to bypass rational evaluation and trigger fear of missing out. Countdown timers on e-commerce sites often reset once you reload the page. Airline booking engines sometimes flash warnings about other customers currently viewing this flight, even when it's not true. The psychological urgency created here doesn't give you time to ask critical questions. Do I really need this? Is it worth the cost? Would I choose it if time pressure weren't applied? Instead, the fear of missing out hijacks decision-making. Real scarcity has verifiable constraints. A collectible artwork has a fixed number of copies. A natural resource has measurable limits. If you step away and the scarcity evaporates, it wasn't real, it was manufactured urgency. The defense strategy is simple but difficult in practice. Pause. If scarcity is genuine, the opportunity will still be gone tomorrow. If it isn't, you'll find the last chance mysteriously renews itself. The contrast principle shield. Imagine walking into a clothing store. A salesperson first shows you a $900 leather jacket. It's sleek, elegant, but wildly outside your budget. Then they guide you to a $300 jacket. Suddenly, $300 feels like a bargain compared to the $900 option, even though it might still be overpriced. This is the contrast principle at work. Your brain doesn't evaluate things in isolation. It evaluates them in sequence. The first number you encounter becomes an anchor, and everything afterward is judged relative to that anchor. Real estate agents use this constantly. They'll show you a house that's way above your budget, poorly located, and badly maintained, just to make the next house seem like a dream in comparison. Restaurants place one outrageously expensive dish at the top of the menu, not because they expect you to order it, but because it makes the rest seem more reasonable. The danger of contrast is that it feels like rational judgment when it's actually contextual distortion. The defense is to establish independent standards before exposure. Decide what you're willing to pay for a car before stepping onto the lot. Set your budget before entering the store. Define what features matter most before viewing options. By anchoring your decision to your own criteria rather than someone else's sequence, you reclaim control of the comparison. Consistency pressure recognition. Human beings crave internal consistency. Once we say yes, we feel compelled to keep saying yes. Once we make a public statement, we feel trapped by it. Once we commit to a path, we resist deviation, even if all signs point toward failure. This consistency drive is why salespeople push for verbal commitments early in the interaction. Would you agree that saving money is important? Would you say your family's health is a priority? By answering yes, you've already built a logical chain that leads toward the product they're about to offer. Saying no later creates internal discomfort. So many people keep saying yes to avoid the psychological friction. In life, consistency pressure keeps people in bad marriages, failing businesses, or misguided investments. They once said, "This is the right path," and changing course feels like admitting failure. Politicians exploit this by framing issues as loyalty tests, where abandoning a stance equals betrayal. But consistency is not always a virtue. Sometimes it's just stubbornness dressed in rationalization. The defense is to separate helpful consistency, like following through on personal values, from harmful rigidity. A simple check is to ask, if new evidence were presented to me today, would I make the same decision? If the answer is no, the only thing keeping you tied to the path is pressure to appear consistent. That's not strength, it's a trap. The door in the face, understanding. Imagine a fundraiser asks if you'd be willing to volunteer 10 hours per week for the next year. You refuse instantly. Then they ask if you'd consider donating $50 instead. Compared to the massive initial request, the $50 feels small, reasonable, even generous. This is the door in the face technique. The psychology behind it is twofold. First, the extreme request anchors your expectations high. Second, when the smaller request follows, you feel like you're being offered a compromise. To refuse again feels socially uncomfortable, like you're unwilling to meet halfway. Negotiators often exploit this dynamic by opening with outrageous demands they know will be rejected. Car dealers inflate initial offers, expecting to be bargained down. Political lobbyists propose extreme legislation, knowing that the scaled-back version, their real goal, will feel like a compromise. Defense requires recognizing that the first request may never have been intended to succeed. It was bait. By refusing both the unreasonable anchor and the reasonable follow-up without guilt, you step outside the illusion of compromise. The real compromise is with yourself, when you accept terms you wouldn't have considered if they'd been presented alone. Liking and similarity exploitation. We're wired to trust people who seem like us. Shared background, shared humor, shared style. These similarities act like shortcuts to trust. This is why you're more likely to hire someone who attended the same school, or buy from a salesperson who mirrors your gestures and speech patterns. Marketers and sales professionals are trained to weaponize this. They'll complement your taste, mirror your posture, find common ground in hobbies or hometowns. Even online, bots are designed to echo your opinions to build rapport before sliding in persuasive messages. The effect is so strong that even trivial commonalities, like having the same birthday or liking the same sports team, can tip decisions. The defense is to pause and separate the messenger from the message. Do you like the person because of genuine shared values, or because they're strategically mirroring you? Would you still trust their offer if it came from someone you didn't feel a bond with? When you remove the glow of similarity, you can judge the substance on its own merits. Confirmation bias immunity. Your brain is a prediction machine, constantly making rapid judgments to navigate a complex world. These mental shortcuts served our ancestors well, but in today's information-rich environment, they can lead you astray. The biases I'm about to share with you aren't character flaws. They're universal features of human cognition. Recognizing them is the first step to working with your brain instead of being controlled by it. Your brain is not neutral in the way it processes information. It has a built-in preference. Seek out evidence that supports what you already believe and ignore or dismiss evidence that contradicts it. This is confirmation bias, and it's one of the most pervasive distortions in human thinking. Imagine a person who believes that left-handed people are more creative. When they meet a left-handed artist, they file that away as proof. When they meet a left-handed accountant, they forget it or dismiss it as irrelevant. The brain cherry-picks what fits the narrative and discards the rest. In the digital world, confirmation bias has become industrialized. Social media platforms track your clicks, your likes, your watch time, and then feed you more of the same. If you lean toward a political view, the algorithm surrounds you with reinforcing content until it feels like the entire world agrees with you. This creates echo chambers where beliefs harden into certainties, not because they're objectively true, but because dissenting information never enters your awareness. The defense against confirmation bias is uncomfortable but powerful. Actively seek disconfirming evidence. Instead of asking, "How am I right?" ask, "What evidence could prove me wrong?" Read arguments from the other side, especially from thoughtful sources, not strawman caricatures. By exposing yourself to high-quality opposing viewpoints, you puncture the illusion that your perspective is the only one that exists. Immunity doesn't mean eliminating bias. It means building habits that keep your mind open. The availability heuristic defense. Picture this. You see multiple news reports about shark attacks in the same week. Suddenly, going to the beach feels dangerous. Rationally, the odds of being attacked by a shark haven't changed, but because those vivid images are fresh in your mind, the danger feels more likely. That's the availability heuristic. The brain uses ease of recall as a shortcut for probability. If something comes to mind quickly, we assume it must be common or likely. This worked well for our ancestors. If you just saw someone get bitten by a snake, avoiding tall grass was a good survival move. But in a media-saturated world, this shortcut backfires. Media outlets exploit this by flooding coverage around certain events, plane crashes, violent crimes, natural disasters, while ignoring statistically bigger dangers like heart disease or car accidents. As a result, your perception of risk gets skewed. You fear what is vivid, not what is likely. Defense comes from deliberately grounding yourself in base rates and statistical realities. When fear spikes, ask, what are the actual odds? If you're worried about flying, look at aviation safety statistics compared to driving. If you're panicked about violent crime, examine crime rate trends instead of relying on a single shocking headline. The heuristic will always tug at your emotions, but consulting real numbers allows you to override the distortion. Anchoring effect resistance. Imagine you're shopping for a watch. The salesperson first shows you a luxury model priced at $2,000. When they later show you a $500 watch, it feels like a bargain, even though you had no intention of spending that much in the first place. This is anchoring at work. The first number you encounter becomes a reference point that shapes all later judgments. What makes anchoring so insidious is that the initial number doesn't even have to be relevant. In one study, people spun a wheel of fortune rigged to land on a high or low number, then were asked to estimate the number of African countries in the UN. Those who spun higher numbers gave higher estimates, despite the number being completely random. Negotiators, salespeople, and marketers know this instinctively. A car dealer asks, How much were you hoping to spend? The number you say becomes your anchor, often higher than what you could have bargained down to. Real estate agents price houses slightly above market value. Knowing the anchor makes negotiations slide upward. The defense is preparation. Walk into negotiations armed with independent benchmarks, average salaries for your role, recent sale prices in the neighborhood, fair market values for the item. When you have your own anchor set beforehand, you're less vulnerable to the artificial anchors set by others. And when someone throws out a number, resist the urge to react. Pause, reset, and compare it to the standard you already established. The representativeness, heuristic awareness. Your brain loves patterns. When you see someone quiet, bookish, and thoughtful, your mind quickly categorizes them as a librarian. But statistically, there are far more farmers than librarians, so the odds are much higher they're a farmer. This error is the representativeness heuristic, judging probability based on similarity to a prototype instead of actual base rates. This heuristic explains why stereotypes persist. People assume that someone who looks the part must fit the category, ignoring statistical realities. It's also why coincidences feel meaningful. If you meet someone with the same birthday, your brain overestimates how rare that event is. Even though in a group of just 23 people, the odds of a shared birthday are already above 50%. The danger of representativeness is that it replaces rigorous probability thinking with surface resemblance. We fall for narratives that fit the story rather than analyzing numbers. Investors buy into startups because their founders look like stereotypical visionaries. Juries misjudge guilt or innocence based on whether the defendant looks like a criminal. Defense requires slowing down and asking, what are the base rates? Instead of focusing on resemblance, focus on frequency. In probability problems, always start with the size of the underlying population. By shifting attention from appearance to actual likelihood, you sidestep the seductive pull of representativeness. Overconfidence effect recognition. Ask a group of people if they're above-average drivers, and the vast majority will say yes. Statistically, that's impossible. This is the overconfidence effect, the tendency to overestimate our own abilities, accuracy, and control. Overconfidence shows up everywhere. Investors believe they can time the market, even though most professionals underperform index funds. Entrepreneurs consistently underestimate how long projects will take and how much they'll cost. Everyday people skip insurance or emergency savings because they're sure bad luck won't strike them. The problem isn't just arrogance, it's blind spots. Overconfidence makes us underestimate risks, dismiss preparation, and assume outcomes will bend in our favor. This leads to fragile plans and unnecessary exposure to danger. Defense involves deliberately puncturing the illusion of certainty. One method is the pre-mortem. Before starting a project, imagine it has failed spectacularly. Ask yourself, what went wrong? This exercise forces you to confront overlooked weaknesses. Another is to seek external feedback from people who aren't invested in protecting your ego. Track your own predictions over time. Many people discover they're wrong far more often than they imagined. Confidence can be an asset, but only when it's tethered to reality. Recognizing overconfidence doesn't mean becoming timid. It means building humility into your decision-making so optimism doesn't become recklessness. The Dunning-Kruger shield. The Dunning-Kruger effect reveals one of the strangest quirks of human psychology. The less people know about a subject, the more confident they often feel about their knowledge. With only a surface-level understanding, it's easy to assume mastery. True experts, on the other hand, are more likely to doubt themselves because they're deeply aware of how much complexity remains unseen. This effect is everywhere. The coworker who reads one article about nutrition suddenly dispenses health advice with complete certainty. The amateur investor who makes a lucky trade begins speaking like a market guru. On social media, this plays out daily as individuals voice bold opinions on medicine, economics, or climate science with the confidence of authority, even though they've barely scratched the surface. The danger isn't just misplaced confidence. It's that confident ignorance can sound more persuasive than cautious expertise. Experts hedge their statements because they know the limits of certainty, while non-experts proclaim absolutes that sound decisive. Defense means cultivating humility about what you know and don't know. Ask yourself, what's the depth of my expertise? What evidence supports this view? Am I relying on surface impressions or rigorous study? The shield against Dunning-Kruger isn't silence. It's the willingness to seek out qualified voices when the subject exceeds your knowledge. Confidence should be calibrated to competence, not to ego. Hindsight bias defense. Looking back, the past always feels more predictable than it actually was. This is hindsight bias, the belief that we knew it all along once an outcome is revealed. Think about major historical events. After a financial crisis, commentators insist the warning signs were obvious. After an election, analysts explain why the winning candidate was always destined to win. Sports fans declare the outcome of the game inevitable once the score is final. In reality, before the outcome, the landscape was full of uncertainty and alternative possibilities. The problem with hindsight bias is that it distorts learning. If you believe you predicted events more accurately than you really did, you fail to adjust your mental models. You underestimate the role of luck and overestimate your foresight. Defense requires building a paper trail of your predictions before outcomes unfold. Write them down: what you think will happen, why you think it will happen, and how confident you are. When the results come in, compare your record against reality. This practice, used by forecasters and decision analysts, strips away the illusion of inevitability and shows where your reasoning was strong or flawed. The gambler's fallacy understanding. In a casino, a roulette wheel lands on black 5 times in a row. The crowd gathers, convinced that red is now due. This intuition feels right, but it's dead wrong. Each spin of the wheel is independent. The odds of landing on red remain exactly the same regardless of what came before. This is the gambler's fallacy, the belief that random events balance out in the short term. It leads people to chase losses at slot machines, double down on bad bets, and misinterpret streaks as signs of what's coming next. Investors fall into the same trap. After a string of market gains, they assume a crash must be imminent, or after repeated losses, they believe a rebound is guaranteed. The fallacy exploits your brain's craving for patterns. In nature, events are rarely independent. Storm clouds signal rain. Animal tracks mean prey nearby, so evolution tuned us to expect balance. But in pure chance systems like coin flips, dice rolls, or slot machines, the past has zero influence on the future. Defense means internalizing this independence. Whether a coin lands heads 10 times or 0, the probability on the next flip remains 50/50ths. Remembering this prevents you from seeing patterns where none exist and keeps you from chasing inevitable reversals that never come. Base rate neglect awareness. Imagine someone tells you about a man who is quiet, meticulous, and enjoys reading poetry. Are they more likely to be a librarian or a salesperson? Most people instinctively say librarian. But here's the catch: salespeople vastly outnumber librarians. Statistically, the odds favor salesperson, even if the description sounds more like the stereotype of a librarian. This is base rate neglect, ignoring general statistical information in favor of vivid specifics. Doctors sometimes fall into this trap when diagnosing rare diseases based on distinctive symptoms, forgetting that common illnesses are far more likely. Investors overvalue striking stories about startups without considering the base rate of new business failure. The defense is to always re-anchor in background frequencies. Before judging a case, ask, what's the base rate of this event in the population? How common is this outcome overall? By combining specific evidence with base rate context, you avoid letting colorful details drown out the statistical truth. The conjunction fallacy shield. Consider this classic scenario. Linda is described as bright, outspoken, and deeply concerned with issues of social justice. Which is more likely? Linda is a bank teller. Linda is a bank teller and active in the feminist movement. Most people choose option 2 because it feels more consistent with the description. But mathematically, option 1 must be more likely. Every feminist bank teller is also a bank teller, but not every bank teller is a feminist. The probability of a specific conjunction can never exceed the probability of the broader category. This error, the conjunction fallacy, reveals how much we prefer coherent stories over statistical logic. The detailed option feels richer, more plausible, more satisfying to the narrative. But feeling coherent isn't the same as being probable. Marketers exploit this by layering detail into their pitches. A product isn't just reliable, it's reliable, eco-friendly, and endorsed by professionals. Each added detail makes the story feel stronger, even though every extra condition reduces the probability of it being true. Defense means stepping back and asking, is the detailed scenario just a subset of the simpler one? If so, the simpler scenario is always at least as likely, and usually more so. By checking your instinct for narrative coherence against the rules of probability, you shield yourself from seductive but misleading stories. Survivorship bias recognition. When you look around, it seems like success is everywhere. Entrepreneurs who made it flood bestsellers lists. Investors who struck gold dominate financial headlines. Athletes who reach the top get documentaries. But this view hides a silent truth. For every visible winner, there are thousands of invisible failures. This distortion is called survivorship bias. We see the survivors because the failures disappear from public view. Business schools analyze the habits of successful CEOs without considering all the equally hardworking leaders whose companies collapsed. Mutual funds showcase their best-performing products while quietly closing the poor performers. In war, stories circulate about aircraft that returned from missions full of bullet holes, but statisticians realized that focusing only on the survivors hid the planes that never returned. Survivorship bias tricks us into overestimating the probability of success. It's why motivational books often feel deceptively persuasive. They highlight rare winners, not the countless others who used the same strategies and failed. Defense requires deliberately seeking out the missing data. Ask, what happened to those who didn't make it? What failures am I not seeing? Realistic assessment comes from studying both survivors and dropouts. Success isn't just about imitating winners. It's about understanding the odds. The backfire effect defense. We like to imagine that facts speak for themselves. Present someone with contradictory evidence, and they'll change their mind. But psychology tells a harsher truth. When deeply held beliefs are challenged, people often cling to them even harder. This is the backfire effect. For example, political fact-checking frequently fails. A supporter of one party may double down when shown evidence that contradicts their position, interpreting the correction as an attack rather than clarification. Attempts to debunk myths about vaccines, diets, or conspiracy theories can backfire in exactly this way, strengthening conviction instead of softening it. The backfire effect isn't about stupidity, it's about identity. When beliefs are tied to self-image, challenging them feels like a personal assault. Defensiveness takes over, and logic shuts down. Defense lies not in argument, but in curiosity. Instead of hammering people with contradictory evidence, approach them with questions. Why do you hold this view? What shaped it? Seek to understand rather than to win. Likewise, when your own beliefs are challenged, pause before defending. Ask yourself, am I reacting to the evidence or to the threat to my identity? This small shift creates space for genuine learning instead of knee-jerk resistance. Attribution error understanding. When you succeed, it's because you're smart, hardworking, or disciplined. When you fail, it's because of bad luck or external obstacles. But when others succeed, we downplay their luck, and when they fail, we attribute it to laziness or incompetence. This is the fundamental attribution error. Consider being late to a meeting. For you, it's because of traffic or an emergency. For someone else, it's because they're careless. Or in sports, if your team wins, it's skill. If they lose, it's the referee's fault. This self-serving bias distorts accountability and warps how we judge others. The defense involves consciously flipping the lens. When evaluating others, ask, what situational factors could explain their behavior? When evaluating yourself, ask, what personal responsibility do I hold here? By balancing internal and external factors fairly, You avoid oversimplifying complex realities and cultivate more accurate and compassionate judgments. The curse of knowledge recognition. Once you know something, it becomes nearly impossible to imagine what it's like not to know it. This curse of knowledge makes experts terrible at teaching, managers unclear in instructions, and communicators overconfident in clarity. Think of a programmer explaining code to a beginner and skipping crucial steps because it's obvious. Or a teacher forgetting that students don't yet know the background knowledge necessary to understand today's lesson. Even in everyday life, when you hum a song in your head, you expect others to recognize it instantly, even though they can't hear your internal soundtrack. The defense is to actively check for understanding. Break concepts into smaller steps. Ask others to explain back what they've heard. Recall what it felt like to be a beginner, confused, uncertain, unaware. Good communicators don't just share knowledge. They bridge the gap between what they know and what others don't. Framing effect immunity. Imagine a doctor tells you a surgery has a 90% survival rate. That sounds reassuring. Now imagine they tell you it has a 10% mortality rate. Suddenly, it feels riskier, even though the numbers are identical. That's the framing effect in action. The way information is presented, not the facts themselves, shapes our decisions. Politicians use it constantly. Death tax versus estate tax. Climate change versus global warming. Advertisers frame products as discounts instead of costs saved. The framing manipulates emotions and perceptions without altering reality. Defense means reframing the information yourself. Flip the numbers. Translate the message into the opposite frame. If it sounds appealing one way but not the other, your judgment is being shaped by wording, not substance. Immunity comes from focusing on the underlying facts, stripped of their rhetorical packaging. The effect heuristic awareness. Your emotional state doesn't just color your mood. It biases your judgment about unrelated decisions. On sunny days, people invest more in the stock market and leave bigger tips. In good moods, risks seem smaller and rewards larger. In bad moods, risks loom larger and opportunities shrink. This effect heuristic shows how feelings sneak into reasoning. A romantic relationship may look promising when you're euphoric, but disastrous when you're angry, even if nothing objectively changed. A politician's speech might sound persuasive if it's delivered during a rally that excites you, but hollow when revisited later in calm reflection. Defense requires emotional self-awareness. Before making a decision, ask, is my judgment being influenced by how I feel right now? Consider waiting until your mood stabilizes. Critical choices, financial, professional, relational, deserve to be made under neutral conditions, not colored by fleeting emotion. Peak-end rule understanding. Human memory doesn't record experiences evenly from start to finish. Instead, we disproportionately remember two parts: the most intense moment, the peak, and how it ended. This is the peak-end rule. For instance, patients who undergo painful medical procedures report them as less unpleasant if the procedure ends gradually rather than abruptly, even if the total pain endured is greater. Vacation memories hinge less on the overall trip and more on one thrilling highlight and how the trip concluded. Customer service interactions are remembered based on how they ended, not how they began. The peak-end rule explains why we misremember experiences and sometimes repeat them despite overall negatives. A long, mediocre concert with a fantastic finale gets recalled as amazing. A tough workout that ends with a runner's high feels worth repeating. Defense means evaluating experiences by their full duration, not just their standout moments. Track the average quality across time. Ask yourself, am I remembering the reality or just the highlight and the ending? By broadening perspective, you escape memory's distortions and make better choices about what to pursue or avoid in the future. Emotional contagion awareness. Emotions don't stay contained within individuals. They spread like wildfire. This phenomenon, known as emotional contagion, happens through subtle cues you may not even notice. A smile, a sigh, a shift in tone. All of these can activate mirror neurons in your brain, prompting you to feel echoes of what you observe. When someone walks into a room radiating stress or excitement, their emotional state begins to ripple outward, shifting the atmosphere for everyone else. This mechanism has evolutionary roots. Rapidly sharing emotional states within a group once improved survival by synchronizing reactions to threats or opportunities. But in modern settings, it also creates vulnerabilities. Skilled manipulators deliberately manage their visible emotions, projecting confidence during negotiations, urgency during sales pitches, or warmth during persuasion attempts. They know that by embodying a certain state, they can make you feel it too. Defense requires checking your emotional baseline. Before an important interaction, ask yourself, how do I feel right now? Afterward, ask again, what changed? If your emotions shifted drastically in ways that don't align with the facts of the situation, you may have absorbed someone else's state rather than responding authentically. Awareness lets you reclaim ownership of your emotions instead of passively catching them. The fundamental attribution error in relationships. In close relationships, small misunderstandings can escalate quickly, not because of the events themselves, but because of how we interpret them. The fundamental attribution error makes us assume that our partner's negative behavior reflects their character, while our own negative behavior comes from circumstances. If your partner forgets to pick up groceries, you might think, they're careless or they don't care about me. But if you forget, the story changes. I was too busy. I had too much on my mind. This double standard erodes trust and compassion. Over time, it turns small mistakes into perceived character flaws, poisoning the relationship. The defense is empathy grounded in perspective taking. Instead of assuming intent, ask, what circumstances might have contributed to this behavior? Perhaps your partner was exhausted, distracted, or overwhelmed. When you extend the same situational understanding to others that you give yourself, relationships become less adversarial and more cooperative. Remember, healthy connections thrive not on perfection, but on generosity of interpretation. Attachment style recognition. The way you connect to others in adulthood isn't random. It often reflects patterns formed in childhood. These patterns, called attachment styles, shape how you give and receive love, how you handle conflict, and how secure you feel in relationships. A secure attachment style balances closeness with independence. These individuals trust that they're lovable and that others can be relied on. Anxious attachment, however, is marked by fear of abandonment. People with this style may cling, overanalyze, or need constant reassurance. Avoidant attachment leans the other way. Discomfort with intimacy, emotional withdrawal, or an overemphasis on independence. A disorganized attachment style combines elements of both, creating push-pull dynamics that confuse both partners. Recognizing your attachment style doesn't lock you into destiny. It creates awareness. You can catch yourself when you're triggered, understand why you react the way you do, and choose healthier responses. For example, if you lean anxious, you can practice self-soothing rather than demanding constant reassurance. If you lean avoidant, you can challenge yourself to stay open during emotional conversations instead of retreating. Attachment awareness also helps you evaluate potential partners. Are you repeating old patterns or building something new? Gaslighting detection skills. Gaslighting is one of the most insidious forms of psychological manipulation. It doesn't attack your body. It attacks your perception of reality. The process often begins subtly. A manipulator questions your memory of small details. Are you sure you locked the door? They contradict your feelings. You're overreacting. That never happened. Over time, these small denials accumulate, leaving you doubting your memory, your judgment, and even your sanity. Signs of gaslighting include second-guessing yourself constantly, apologizing excessively, and feeling confused about events you once remembered clearly. You may find yourself relying on the gaslighter for reassurance about what's real. This dynamic creates dependence and makes it easier for them to control your choices. Defense means trusting your initial perceptions and anchoring yourself in evidence. Keep written records of important conversations and events. Share your experiences with trusted friends or therapists who can provide external validation. And most importantly, notice the pattern. Occasional disagreement is normal, but systematic undermining of your reality is abuse. Detecting gaslighting early can protect your autonomy and prevent psychological erosion. Love bombing recognition. Not all affection is healthy. Sometimes, overwhelming attention and devotion are weapons disguised as love. This is the tactic known as love bombing. At first, it feels intoxicating, lavish compliments, constant messages, grand gestures. You feel like you've finally found someone who truly sees and values you. But love bombing is less about love and more about control. Once dependency is established, once you crave the validation and intensity, the manipulator withdraws. The sudden absence of attention creates desperation. You chase the high of the early days, tolerating behavior you'd otherwise reject, all in hopes of returning to that euphoric state. Healthy affection develops differently. It grows steadily, with consistency and respect for boundaries. Love bombing, by contrast, is all fireworks and no foundation. Recognizing it means asking, is this pace sustainable? Is the affection proportional to the depth of our connection? If the intensity feels excessive for how well you actually know the person, caution is warranted. Real love deepens with time. Manipulation burns bright, then turns cold. Triangulation defense. Triangulation is a psychological tactic that thrives on instability. Instead of relating to you directly, a manipulator pulls in a third party to shift dynamics in their favor. They may compare you unfavorably to someone else, highlight another person's attention to spark jealousy, or deliberately cultivate competition for their approval. This strategy keeps everyone off balance while they maintain central control. In relationships, triangulation might look like a partner constantly praising an ex or talking about how desirable someone else finds them. In workplaces, a manager may pit employees against each other by selectively sharing praise or criticism, fostering rivalry rather than cooperation. Defense requires cutting through the smoke by addressing the behavior directly. Rather than competing for approval, calmly acknowledge the triangulation. It feels like comparisons are being used here. Can we focus on the issue between us instead? Direct communication shifts power back to you, refusing to play a game designed to keep you insecure. The gray rock method. Sometimes avoidance isn't possible. You might have a manipulative coworker, a toxic family member, or a co-parent who must remain in your life. In such cases, the gray rock method becomes a powerful tool. The concept is simple. Become as uninteresting and emotionally flat as a gray rock. Manipulators thrive on emotional reactions, your anger, your defensiveness, your hurt. By removing that fuel, you deprive them of their reward. When they provoke, you respond with short, neutral answers. Okay, I see. Noted. You don't volunteer personal details or rise to baiting comments. This doesn't mean repressing your emotions. It means choosing not to display them to someone who would weaponize them. Over time, the manipulator finds you unrewarding to engage with and often shifts focus elsewhere. The gray rock method is not about building connection. It's about self-preservation when healthier options aren't available. Boundary setting psychology. Boundaries are the architecture of healthy relationships. They're not punishments or walls. They're guidelines that define how you expect to be treated. Clear boundaries protect your time, energy, emotions, and values while giving others clarity about what behavior is acceptable. People often resist setting boundaries because they confuse them with selfishness or fear conflict. But boundaries actually improve relationships. Without them, resentment festers. With them, mutual respect grows. For example, setting a boundary might mean saying, I don't answer work calls after 7 p.m., or I need advance notice before visitors come over. The key is consistency. A boundary unenforced is merely a suggestion. If someone repeatedly violates it, you must follow through with consequences, whether that's limiting access, reducing contact, or walking away entirely. Start small. Practice saying no to low-stakes requests before tackling bigger ones. Like muscles, boundaries strengthen with use. And the stronger they get, the less room manipulators have to exploit you. The trauma bond recognition. One of the most dangerous relational traps is the trauma bond, a cycle of abuse intertwined with intermittent affection. In this dynamic, Mistreatment is punctuated with bursts of kindness, apologies, or intimacy. The relief after pain creates a powerful emotional high, confusing the victim into mistaking survival for love. This cycle mirrors addiction. The brain latches onto the intermittent rewards, much like gamblers addicted to slot machines. Each act of affection feels more intense because it follows deprivation or cruelty. Victims often say, "I know it's bad, but when it's good, it's amazing." This confusion deepens dependency, making it incredibly difficult to leave. Recognizing trauma bonds requires stepping back from the cycle and asking, if this affection weren't preceded by pain, would it still feel as intense? Genuine love doesn't demand suffering as its entry fee. Breaking free often requires support networks, friends, therapists, or support groups who can reflect back the reality you've been conditioned to doubt. Naming the bond is the first step to breaking it. Projection and defense mechanisms. Projection is one of the most common and corrosive defense mechanisms. It involves attributing your own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or behaviors to someone else. The unfaithful partner accuses you of being untrustworthy. The dishonest colleague insists you're the liar. By externalizing their own flaws, they avoid confronting uncomfortable truths about themselves. Projection doesn't just distort perception, it destabilizes relationships. Victims of projection often waste energy defending themselves against accusations that have little to do with reality. The real battle isn't about you. It's about the accuser's inability to face their own shadow. Projection is just one of many defense mechanisms the mind uses to shield itself. Rationalization reframes harmful behavior as acceptable. Denial blocks uncomfortable truths altogether. Displacement redirects negative emotions onto safer targets, snapping at a friend because you can't confront your boss. Defense means recognizing these patterns without automatically absorbing them. If accusations seem wildly off base, consider whether projection is at play. If a partner lashes out disproportionately, look for displacement. And in your own behavior, notice when rationalization or denial is keeping you from accountability. Healthy relationships aren't built on defenses. They're built on honesty and responsibility. Codependency patterns. Codependency is often described as losing yourself while trying to save someone else. At its core, it's when your identity, energy, and sense of worth become tied to fixing or supporting another person, often someone struggling with addiction, dysfunction, or chronic instability. On the surface, codependents seem endlessly giving. They sacrifice sleep, finances, and personal goals just to help. But underneath, this dynamic quietly corrodes both people. The codependent ends up enabling harmful behavior rather than solving it. For instance, a partner of an alcoholic may cover up mistakes, excuse absences, or take on double the responsibilities to keep the household functioning. Instead of helping, this shields the other person from consequences and prolongs the dysfunction. What makes codependency so tricky is that it often feels noble. Helping is seen as love, selflessness, or duty. But true support doesn't erase your own needs. It balances compassion with boundaries. Recovery begins when you learn to differentiate between helping and enabling, between compassion that empowers and sacrifice that erases. The healthier alternative is interdependence, where both people remain whole, support one another, and respect each other's boundaries. It means saying, "I care for you, but I will not destroy myself to save you." The stonewalling response. Stonewalling is one of the most destructive yet common communication patterns. It happens when one partner emotionally shuts down during conflict, crossing their arms, giving one-word answers, or refusing to engage altogether. Sometimes it escalates into the infamous silent treatment, where one person disappears physically or emotionally for hours or days. Stonewalling can be weaponized as punishment. You hurt me, so I'll freeze you out. But in many cases, it's actually a self-protection strategy. When someone feels overwhelmed by conflict, they may shut down because they literally can't process any more input. Their nervous system goes into overload, and silence becomes the only way to cope. The key difference lies in intent. Punitive stonewalling is manipulative. It's about control. Protective stonewalling is about regulation. It's about calming down before re-engaging. The problem is, from the outside, both look the same. Healthy resolution means making silence temporary and purposeful. It's okay to say, I need 20 minutes to cool down. I promise I'll come back, and we can talk then. This transforms withdrawal into a constructive pause instead of abandonment. In other words, breaks are healthy. Disappearing is destructive. Emotional validation versus agreement. One of the most common traps in relationships is confusing validation with agreement. Many people think that if they validate someone's feelings, they're automatically endorsing their perspective. But validation is not agreement, it's acknowledgement. For example, if your friend says, I feel humiliated because I wasn't invited to the party, you can validate by saying, I understand why you'd feel left out. That makes sense. Notice that you're not confirming whether they were actually snubbed or whether their interpretation is correct. You're simply acknowledging their emotional reality. This distinction is powerful because it allows empathy without surrendering your own truth. It prevents unnecessary escalation. Imagine telling someone, that's ridiculous, you're overreacting. They'll only dig deeper, defending their emotions. But if you validate, I get why you're upset, they calm down because they feel seen. In fact, research shows that validation de-escalates conflict and increases trust. It creates a foundation where problem-solving becomes possible. So the next time you're caught in disagreement, remember, you don't have to agree to validate. The pursuer-distancer dynamic. Many couples unconsciously fall into a predictable dance. One pursues, the other distances. The pursuer craves closeness, wants to resolve issues quickly, and often says things like, why won't you talk to me? We need to fix this now. The distancer, overwhelmed by intensity, withdraws for space, thinking, if I engage now, I'll say something I regret. Here's the problem. The harder the pursuer pushes, the more the distancer retreats. The more the distancer retreats, the more the pursuer panics and pushes harder. It's a feedback loop of frustration. Breaking this cycle requires both sides to step outside the pattern. Pursuers must learn to self-soothe, to give space without spiraling into panic. Distancers must learn to lean in, initiating connection and reassuring their partner instead of disappearing. Neither role is bad. Both are instinctive coping styles. But understanding your role in the cycle allows you to change it. And when both partners step out of the dance, relationships regain balance. Healthy conflict resolution. Conflict itself is not the enemy of love. In fact, couples who never argue often suppress problems until resentment explodes. What matters is how you fight. Healthy conflict resolution focuses on issues, not identities. Instead of, you're so selfish, say, when you cancel plans last minute, I feel unimportant. Notice the shift from attacking character to describing behavior. I statements are crucial. They allow you to own your feelings without blaming. I felt hurt when you interrupted me is radically different from, you never listen. Another cornerstone is listening. Not listening to rebut, but listening to understand. Psychologists call this active listening, paraphrasing the other person's words, asking clarifying questions, and resisting the urge to score points. When emotions escalate, take a break. But like with stonewalling, the break must be bounded. I need 15 minutes to calm down. I'll come back, and we'll finish this. Healthy couples know that conflict is not about winning or losing. It's about reaching understanding and restoring connection. Trust building and rebuilding. Trust is not built by grand gestures. It's built in the micro moments. The partner who remembers your coffee order, who shows up when they said they would, who checks in when you're stressed. These small consistencies accumulate into a powerful sense of safety. When trust is broken, however, repair is slow and painstaking. It begins with acknowledgement, owning the harm without minimizing. Then comes behavioral change, showing through consistent action that the betrayal won't be repeated. Patience is essential because trust cannot be rushed. Demanding instant forgiveness only deepens the wound. Sometimes rebuilding trust requires outside help. Therapy, mediation, or structured conversations. But the principle remains. Trust grows only where words and actions align. And once rebuilt, it can even become stronger because the relationship has proven its resilience. The power of secure relationships. At the deepest level, secure relationships shape not just your emotions, but your biology. Neuroscience shows that being in a secure bond literally rewires the brain, calming the amygdala, regulating stress hormones, and enhancing resilience. A secure partner provides a safe haven, a place where you can collapse without fear of judgment. But they also provide a secure base, a launching pad that empowers you to take risks, grow, and explore the world. These relationships aren't about perfection. They're about presence. Secure partners are emotionally available, responsive, and accepting. They don't always get it right, but they repair quickly when they get it wrong. The profound truth is this: humans are wired for connection. Investing in secure relationships is not just a matter of romance or companionship. It's one of the most important investments you can make for your mental health, your resilience, and even your longevity. Source: credibility evaluation. In the digital age, authority is often borrowed rather than earned. A sharp suit, a confident tone, or an impressive title can make almost anyone appear credible. Yet true expertise rests on far sturdier ground: relevant education, peer review, accountability, and a proven track record. A qualified scientist, for instance, has years of specialized training, research publications that have been critiqued by other experts, and institutional affiliations that hold them accountable. By contrast, fake experts often rely on theatrics. They might brand themselves as founders of official-sounding organizations, collect honorary titles from obscure institutions, or speak with absolute certainty on subjects far outside their formal training. Their confidence substitutes for evidence. And because most audiences aren't trained to dissect credentials, their performance often works. The defense is vigilance. Ask, what are this person's actual qualifications? Do they have relevant expertise in the subject they're addressing, or are they borrowing authority from unrelated fields? Are their claims consistent with the broader consensus of experts, or do they present themselves as lone rebels with exclusive truth? Who funds them, and who benefits from their message? A trustworthy source welcomes scrutiny. They cite evidence, reference peer-reviewed work, and encourage fact-checking. A suspicious source discourages doubt and demands loyalty. The difference lies not just in what they say, but in how they respond to being questioned. The echo chamber effect. Algorithms have become the architects of our reality. Every time you scroll through a feed, invisible systems curate what you see, tailoring your digital environment to reflect your interests and behaviors. At first, this feels convenient. You see stories, videos, and posts that align with your values and beliefs. But over time, this curation builds an echo chamber, a filter bubble that magnifies what you already think and quietly removes what might challenge you. Inside an echo chamber, confirmation bias is amplified. Every headline confirms your worldview. Every meme mocks the other side. Every comment section reassures you that you're right. What feels like discovering truth is often just encountering carefully reinforced repetition. Social media companies don't design these systems to protect truth. They design them to maximize engagement. Outrage, moral indignation, and extreme claims get more clicks than nuance, so the loudest, most polarizing voices float to the top. The defense requires conscious effort. Deliberately follow sources you disagree with, not trolls or extremists, but thoughtful voices that challenge your assumptions. Read media with different editorial perspectives. Ask yourself, what am I not seeing because of the algorithms shaping my feed? Breaking free of the echo chamber doesn't mean abandoning your values. It means ensuring that your beliefs are tested, stretched, and informed by the full spectrum of reality. Clickbait psychology recognition. Our attention is a limited resource, and headlines are engineered to capture it. Clickbait doesn't rely on accuracy, it relies on emotion. Words like shocking, secret, or they don't want you to know ignite curiosity and suspicion. Headlines invoking fear. Is your water killing you? Or moral outrage? Politician caught in disturbing scandal. Tap into primal responses that bypass rational evaluation. The psychology is simple. Your brain hates uncertainty. A headline that poses a question or leaves information incomplete triggers the curiosity gap. You click because you want resolution. Even if the article itself is thin, the emotional hook already did its job. Consider a headline like, "Scientists discover shocking health secret doctors don't want you to know." It pushes multiple buttons at once: fear of hidden information, distrust of authority, and the allure of forbidden knowledge. Most people never question whether it's plausible that an entire profession is conspiring to hide a single discovery. The emotional pull overrides skepticism. Defense begins with slowing down. Read beyond the headline. Ask, does the content deliver what the headline promised? Does the claim appear in credible outlets or just sensational websites? Remember that if a headline feels designed to provoke, that's not an accident. It's a strategy. False balance and manufactured controversy. Not every debate has two equally valid sides. Yet media outlets, in pursuit of fairness or sometimes spectacle, often frame issues as if they do. This is known as false balance. Climate change is a classic case. Over 97% of climate scientists agree that human activity drives global warming. Yet for years, news programs staged debates between one climate scientist and one skeptic, creating the illusion of a 50-50 controversy. The same pattern emerges with vaccines, evolution, or public health guidelines. Presenting both sides, when expert consensus is overwhelming, misleads audiences into thinking there's legitimate doubt. Sometimes this happens because journalists equate balance with fairness. Other times it's deliberate, a tactic to stall policy change or sow confusion. The defense is understanding the difference between consensus and debate. In science, disagreement exists at the edges about mechanisms, degrees, or solutions. But when an overwhelming majority of experts agree on a fundamental point, presenting a lone dissenter as equal misrepresents reality. A useful question to ask: is this issue actually unsettled among qualified experts, or is the controversy being manufactured for effect? True fairness doesn't mean amplifying fringe positions. It means accurately representing where the weight of evidence lies. The illusory truth effect. One of the most dangerous cognitive shortcuts is the illusion that repetition equals truth. This is the illusory truth effect. The more often you encounter a claim, the more familiar it feels, and familiarity feels like accuracy. Even if you know the claim is false the first time you see it, repetition wears down resistance. Advertisers exploit this relentlessly. Political campaigns repeat slogans until they become accepted wisdom. Propaganda relies not on persuasion, but on sheer frequency. A simple phrase echoed across multiple channels creates the illusion of reality. Research shows that even absurd statements gain credibility through repetition. The human brain processes fluency, the ease with which something is recalled, as a signal of truth. If a claim comes quickly to mind, it feels more likely to be true, even if it's false. The defense is active skepticism. When you see a claim repeated everywhere, don't assume it's true. Assume it's being amplified. Fact-check before sharing. Ask where the information originated. Be wary of statements that seem obvious simply because they're familiar. Truth doesn't become truer with repetition. Lies just become stickier. Deepfake and synthetic media awareness. For centuries, seeing is believing. A photograph was considered undeniable evidence. A video, even more so. But technology has fractured that trust. With deepfake tools, anyone can generate realistic videos of people saying or doing things they never did. Voices can be cloned, faces can be mapped, entire events can be fabricated with chilling accuracy. At the highest level, deepfakes can destabilize politics. Imagine a falsified video of a world leader declaring war. But even at the personal level, deepfake technology can be weaponized to harass, impersonate, or humiliate individuals. Perhaps most dangerously, deepfakes don't even need to be perfect to have an effect. The mere possibility that a video could be fake allows bad actors to dismiss authentic evidence. This is called the liar's dividend. real recordings can be discredited simply by invoking doubt. The defense is layered verification. Trust no single piece of media in isolation. Look for corroboration across multiple reputable outlets. Examine metadata, reverse search images, and check whether other independent witnesses reported the same event. And most importantly, internalize the reality that seeing is no longer enough. We have entered an era where skepticism is not cynicism, it's survival. Statistical manipulation recognition. Numbers carry a deceptive aura of certainty. A headline boasting a 50% increase sounds alarming, until you discover the number rose from 2 to 3. The statistic is technically true, but emotionally misleading. Selective presentation, cherry-picking time frames, or removing critical context can make ordinary changes look extraordinary. Correlation is another common trap. Two trends rising together, say, ice cream sales and drowning incidents, may suggest a causal link. But in reality, both simply increase during summer. Without considering confounding variables, correlation is meaningless. Charts themselves can be manipulated. A graph starting at 95 instead of 0 can make tiny differences look massive. Different scales can exaggerate or minimize trends. Percentages without raw numbers or averages without distributions often obscure more than they reveal. The defense is skepticism paired with questions. What's the sample size? Over what time frame was this data collected? Compared to what baseline? Does correlation imply causation, or is there a hidden variable? Numbers may never lie, but those presenting them often do so strategically. Learning to interrogate the context behind statistics is one of the most powerful tools against manipulation. The backfire effect and fact-checking. You'd think presenting accurate information would correct false beliefs. But when those beliefs are tied to identity or emotion, the opposite often happens. This is the backfire effect. Imagine telling a devoted conspiracy theorist that their claim is false. Instead of reconsidering, they cling to their belief more tightly, interpreting your correction as proof of a cover-up. Traditional fact-checking, then, is not the silver bullet many hoped. Simply saying, "Here's the truth," rarely works if the person feels attacked. Their psychological defenses go up, and instead of updating their model of reality, they reinforce it. Defense requires a shift in approach. Instead of trying to win arguments with blunt facts, approach belief correction with curiosity. Ask open-ended questions. What would convince you otherwise? Or how do you interpret this evidence? Build rapport rather than confrontation. Often, seeds of doubt take time to grow. Your role is not to uproot beliefs instantly, but to create conditions where reconsideration becomes possible. Astroturfing detection. AstroTurf looks like real grass, but it's synthetic. Astroturfing in media works the same way. It creates the illusion of grassroots support where none exists. Coordinated campaigns of bots, fake reviews, and scripted social media posts simulate authentic public enthusiasm or outrage. Signs of astroturfing include synchronized messaging, identical language repeated across multiple accounts, and sudden surges of apparent support without organic buildup. A real grassroots movement is messy, it grows unevenly, shows local variation, and includes a diversity of voices. Manufactured movements, by contrast, are uniform, polished, and suspiciously loud from the start. Corporations have used astroturfing to promote products, and political operatives use it to simulate popular movements. By making you think everyone is saying this, they exploit your natural tendency to conform to social proof. Defense involves looking for authenticity markers. Who are the people behind the voices? Do their accounts have histories and variety? Or were they created recently to amplify a single message? Does the movement reflect organic diversity, or is it a copy-paste chorus? When in doubt, assume that sudden viral support may not be as genuine as it appears. Propaganda technique recognition. Propaganda today isn't about crude posters or obvious slogans. It's about subtle psychological engineering. Emotional appeals bypass rational analysis, reducing complex issues into simple binaries. Us versus them, safety versus danger, loyalty versus betrayal. Fear is weaponized to justify extreme actions, while in-group loyalty is amplified to silence dissent. Modern propaganda often cloaks itself in entertainment. A meme, a catchy slogan, or a short video clip can carry more persuasive power than a detailed policy paper. Repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity feels like truth. By appealing to identity rather than reason, propaganda ensures its message feels personal. Historical campaigns, from wartime posters to advertising jingles, reveal the same tactics recycled with new technology. The defenses are timeless. Recognize when emotional language substitutes for evidence, when slogans oversimplify nuanced issues, and when group loyalty is weaponized to shut down critical thinking. Ask yourself, am I responding to facts or to feelings carefully engineered by someone else? The fire hose of falsehood. Some disinformation campaigns don't even try to be consistent or plausible. Instead, they overwhelm you with volume. This strategy, called the fire hose of falsehood, floods the information space with high-volume, multi-channel, repetitive messaging. The goal is not persuasion, it's confusion. When faced with hundreds of contradictory claims, you give up trying to discern truth. Fatigue sets in, skepticism corrodes trust, and many people disengage altogether. In that silence, manipulators gain power. Think of a fire hose blasting water at impossible speed. You can't block every drop, and if you try, you drown in the effort. Similarly, trying to fact-check every false claim is a losing battle. Defense means changing strategy. Don't chase every rumor. Instead, focus your attention on high-quality, reliable sources. Anchor yourself in verified facts rather than reacting to every wave of disinformation. Remember, confusion is often the intended outcome. Refusing to play that game is itself a form of resistance. Micro-targeting and personalized manipulation. Your digital footprint is more valuable than gold to advertisers and propagandists. Every click, like, purchase, and search builds a psychological profile. Micro-targeting uses this data to craft personalized messages designed to exploit your specific fears and desires. Political campaigns have mastered this art. Instead of showing the same ad to everyone, they deliver thousands of variations. One person sees an ad emphasizing patriotism, another sees one focusing on fear of crime, another sees promises of economic stability. Each message is tailored to vulnerabilities detected in your online behavior. The danger lies in the invisibility of the process. You may never realize that the messages you see differ dramatically from those shown to others. Public debate fragments into personalized realities, making manipulation harder to spot. Defense involves awareness and caution. Understand how your data is collected through cookies, apps, search engines, and even location tracking. Limit what you share. Use privacy tools. And remember that when a message feels perfectly tailored to you, it probably was. And that precision targeting is rarely designed for your benefit. Information diet management. Just as physical health depends on nutrition, mental health depends on your information diet. In a world of 24/7 updates, constant exposure to breaking news often produces anxiety without increasing genuine understanding. Scrolling endlessly through feeds provides dopamine bursts but little lasting value. A poor information diet leaves you jittery, polarized, and exhausted. By contrast, a healthy information diet is balanced, intentional, and diverse. It includes credible sources with different perspectives. It sets limits, choosing times of day for news consumption rather than allowing a constant drip of stimulation. Think of it like food. Junk information, clickbait, outrage bait, endless commentary might be tasty in the moment, but leaves you mentally malnourished. Quality information, well-researched articles, in-depth books, careful reporting, takes more effort but nourishes long-term resilience. Defense means curating your environment rather than passively consuming whatever algorithms serve. Ask, is this information enriching me or just draining me? A well-managed information diet doesn't just protect your mental health. It gives you the clarity and focus to make informed decisions in a noisy world. The decoy effect in pricing. Imagine you walk into a movie theater and see three options at the concession stand. A small popcorn for $3, a medium for $6.50, and a large for $7. At first glance, the medium seems pointless. Why would anyone buy it when the large is just 50 cents more? But that's exactly the point. The medium isn't meant to sell. It's a decoy. Behavioral economists call this the decoy effect. When presented with two options, your evaluation is difficult because you're weighing trade-offs, price versus size, cost versus value. But once a third, strategically chosen inferior option is introduced, the choice suddenly feels obvious. Compared directly to the medium, the large looks like a bargain. You feel like you're outsmarting the system by paying a little extra for so much more. But in reality, the system outsmarted you. This isn't limited to popcorn. Subscription services often offer basic, standard, and premium tiers. The middle tier is designed less as a real option and more as a stepping stone to push you toward the premium choice. Print and digital media subscriptions famously exploit this. Digital only might cost $59, print only $125, and print plus digital $126. Suddenly, the bundle looks irresistible. The decoy effect works because humans evaluate value through relative comparison, not absolute worth. You rarely ask yourself, do I need a large popcorn? Instead, you ask, is the large popcorn a better deal than the medium? The defense is recognizing when an option exists not to serve you, but to manipulate you. Ask, if the decoy were removed, would I still want the option I'm leaning toward? By stripping away the false anchor, you can return to the real question. What do I actually need, and is it worth the price on its own? Mental accounting biases. Money is supposed to be neutral. $1 from your paycheck should be worth the same as $1 won at the casino or refunded from taxes. Economists call this fungibility. Every dollar is interchangeable. But your brain doesn't treat money that way. Instead, it engages in mental accounting, assigning different emotional weights to money depending on where it came from or how you intend to use it. Consider the tax refund. People often treat it like bonus money, splurging on luxuries instead of using it for bills or savings. Rationally, it's just your own money being returned to you, no different from your regular income. But mentally, it feels like a windfall, so spending it feels justified. Casinos exploit this with the idea of house money. If you're gambling with winnings rather than your initial stake, you'll likely take bigger risks, even though those winnings are as real as any other dollar. Similarly, people are oddly reluctant to break a large bill for small purchases, even though the net cost is identical. The format of the money changes how you perceive it. Marketers understand this bias deeply. Gift cards are designed to encourage spending outside normal categories, since they're mentally framed as extra money. Promotions that give you credits or points play the same trick. You spend differently when the money is psychologically reclassified. The defense is reminding yourself that money is fungible. Every dollar counts equally. A $50 gift card, a $50 bonus, and $50 in wages all carry the same purchasing power. Instead of asking, what will I do with this special money? Ask, what's the smartest use of $50? By collapsing your mental accounts back into one, you regain control over financial decisions. The endowment effect in transactions. Imagine you're given a coffee mug at a seminar. You didn't want one before, but now that it's yours, you find yourself reluctant to part with it. If someone offers you $5, you say no. But if you didn't already own it, you wouldn't pay more than $2 to buy it. This gap between selling price and buying price is the endowment effect. Once we own something, we value it more highly simply because it's ours. Ownership creates an irrational attachment. This bias explains why people cling to possessions during garage sales, demanding far more than market value. It also explains why collectors overestimate the worth of their collections and why real estate sellers price their homes far higher than buyers are willing to pay. Businesses intentionally trigger the endowment effect. Car dealerships encourage test drives because once you sit behind the wheel, you start to feel ownership. Retailers use try before you buy or generous return policies for the same reason. Once the product enters your life, giving it up feels like a loss. The defense involves detaching your sense of ownership from market value. Ask, if I didn't already own this, how much would I realistically pay for it? By flipping the perspective, you reveal the hidden inflation of your valuation. Recognizing that attachment inflates price perception helps you make transactions based on objective worth rather than sentimental bias. Hyperbolic discounting awareness. You know you should save money, eat healthy, or finish that project on time. Yet, time and again, you choose the immediate reward instead. This is the trap of hyperbolic discounting. Humans disproportionately prefer small, immediate rewards over larger, delayed ones, even when waiting is clearly the better choice. Think about credit card debt. Spending today and worrying about payment later feels painless in the moment, even though the long-term cost with interest is enormous. Or consider procrastination. You put off work because relaxing now feels better than future productivity, even though the deadline looms. The problem isn't ignorance, it's time perception. A reward today feels tangible and vivid, while a reward in the future feels abstract and uncertain. Behavioral economists show that people will often choose $10 today over $12 tomorrow, even though the return is absurdly good. But if asked to choose between $10 in a year and $12 in a year and one day, most people will wait. The difference is immediacy. Marketers exploit hyperbolic discounting with buy now, pay later, or limited time offers that emphasize instant gratification. Health choices, financial planning, and even relationships suffer when short-term impulses consistently outweigh long-term benefits. The defense involves making future consequences vivid. Visualization helps. Imagine what debt will feel like next month, or picture the relief of having the project done early. Tools like automatic savings, pre-commitment strategies, and accountability systems can counteract impulsivity by making the future as real as the present. The more you connect with your future self, the harder it becomes to betray them for short-term pleasure. The zero price effect. Few things feel as irresistible as the word free. Rationally, the difference between 1 cent and 0 cents should be tiny. But psychologically, that single cent creates an enormous gap. This is the zero price effect, the tendency to assign disproportionate value to free items. Free samples at grocery stores, free shipping thresholds, free trial periods, all capitalize on this quirk. Customers routinely spend more overall to qualify for free shipping than they would have paid for shipping itself. A product bundled with a free gift often sells better than the same product at a slightly lower price without the gift. The thrill of getting something for nothing overwhelms cost-benefit analysis. Amazon famously leveraged this with its free shipping offer across Europe. In every country where shipping dropped to zero, sales skyrocketed. But in France, where they mistakenly set it at 1 franc, about 20 cents, sales barely moved. That tiny price eliminated the magic of free. The defense is stepping back and calculating total cost. Is the free add-on really free if you paid extra to get it? Is the free trial worth signing up for if you'll forget to cancel later? Ask whether the offer makes sense without the word free attached. By remembering that zero is just another price, you can avoid overvaluing what feels like a gift but is really a lure. Social proof in financial decisions. When it comes to investing, logic often takes a back seat to psychology. One of the strongest forces shaping financial behavior is social proof. Simply put, people look to others for cues about what's safe, smart, or profitable. When everyone seems to be making money in real estate, stocks, or cryptocurrencies, it's almost impossible not to feel the tug of fear of missing out. This herd mentality drives bubbles and crashes. During the housing bubble of the 2000s, countless people bought homes not because they needed them or could afford them long-term, but because everyone else was buying and prices kept rising. In the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s, investors threw money at companies with no profits, no products, and sometimes not even real business plans, because the crowd insisted these stocks were the future. The danger of social proof is that it often hides selection bias. You'll hear glowing testimonials from the handful of people who got rich quick, but not from the many who lost everything. Investment marketers understand this bias well. They highlight the winners and bury the losers. Even financial media amplifies social proof by covering hot trends more than boring, stable investments, feeding the sense that everyone is doing it. The defense is grounding decisions in your personal circumstances, risk tolerance, and time horizon. What's right for your neighbor, coworker, or favorite YouTuber isn't necessarily right for you. Social proof can point out opportunities worth investigating, but it should never substitute for due diligence. Before following the herd, ask yourself, would this still make sense if no one else were doing it? The compromise effect. Imagine you're choosing a bottle of wine from a restaurant menu. There's a $25 bottle, a $45 bottle, and a $120 bottle. Most people gravitate toward the $45 option, not too cheap, not too extravagant. This is the compromise effect, the tendency to choose the middle option when faced with extremes. Retailers exploit this bias constantly. Electronics stores showcase three versions of a product: a basic model, a mid-tier model, and a high-end luxury version. Even if the premium product isn't expected to sell, its presence makes the mid-tier option seem sensible and balanced. Car dealerships, appliance stores, and subscription services all use the same tactic. The compromise effect works because people don't want to appear cheap by always picking the lowest priced option, nor do they want to appear wasteful by choosing the highest priced one. The middle ground feels like a rational, safe compromise, even when it isn't truly aligned with your needs. The defense is simple in theory, but difficult in practice. Define what you actually need before you look at options. If you know your budget for wine is $25, the presence of a $120 bottle won't sway you. If you know you only need basic laptop functions, the professional tier suddenly loses its appeal. By identifying your requirements up front, you insulate yourself from the artificial positioning that makes the middle seem like the right choice by default. Loss aversion in marketing. One of the most powerful discoveries in behavioral economics is that people fear losing something far more than they value gaining the same thing. This principle, called loss aversion, is exploited in marketing in countless subtle ways. Limited time offers make you feel like you'll lose out if you don't act now. Membership programs emphasize the points, perks, or streaks you'll forfeit if you cancel. Trial subscriptions seem risk-free. Cancel anytime, until you realize that canceling means losing the benefits you've already come to rely on. The pain of giving something up often outweighs the rational analysis of whether the product or service is truly worth it. Consider gym memberships. Many people keep paying long after they stop going, not because the membership is delivering value, but because canceling feels like admitting failure and losing the chance to get back on track. Streaming platforms, cloud storage services, and software subscriptions use the same playbook. Once you're inside the ecosystem, loss aversion keeps you paying. The defense is reframing decisions in terms of ongoing value rather than sunk costs or fear of loss. Ask, if I didn't already have this, would I buy it today at this price? If the answer is no, then loss aversion is probably clouding your judgment. Recognizing that the fear of losing is stronger than the joy of gaining helps you evaluate choices with clearer eyes. The denomination effect. Why does it feel harder to break a $100 bill than to spend 5 $20 bills? That's the denomination effect. People are less likely to spend large denominations than equivalent amounts in smaller ones. This bias subtly shapes spending behavior. You might hoard big bills in your wallet for weeks, considering them untouchable, while burning through smaller notes without hesitation. Casinos exploit this by converting money into chips, detaching spending from the pain of parting with cash. Digital payments take it a step further. By removing physical money altogether, they eliminate the friction entirely, often leading to higher spending. The denomination effect also appears in saving habits. People who keep emergency cash in a single large bill are less likely to spend it frivolously than if the same amount were divided into smaller bills. Marketers understand this, too. Offering installment payments reframes a big cost into smaller, easier to part with chunks, making people more willing to commit to larger purchases. The defense involves focusing on totals rather than denominations or formats. Whether you spend $100 in one bill or five $20 bills, the outcome is identical. Tracking expenses digitally and reminding yourself that money's form doesn't change its value can help override the denomination illusion. A dollar is a dollar, no matter how it's packaged. Temporal reframing manipulation. Would you pay $600 for a gym membership? For many people, that sounds steep. But what if it's framed as less than $2 a day? Suddenly, the same cost feels manageable. This is temporal reframing, presenting prices in smaller, time-based increments to make them seem more reasonable. Subscription services thrive on this tactic. A streaming platform at $120 per year might feel expensive, but only $10 a month or 33 cents a day sounds like pocket change. Meal kit companies use less than the price of a coffee per meal to make costly services feel like bargains. Insurance, loans, and financing plans all exploit temporal framing by breaking costs into digestible units that obscure the total. The psychological mechanism is simple. People are better at judging small recurring costs than large lump sums. But this can lead to cumulative blind spots. Dozens of just a few dollars a month subscriptions can quietly drain hundreds or even thousands from your annual budget. The defense is recalculating costs in the time frame that matters most for your budget. If your finances are monthly, consider the monthly total of all your expenses. If you're planning for the year, calculate annual costs. Ask yourself, what's the full cost, and does it fit into my long-term financial picture? By resisting the lure of per-day reframing, you gain a realistic perspective on affordability. The Peter Principle reality. In most workplaces, promotions are seen as the ultimate reward. You do well, you get promoted. But the Peter Principle reveals a hidden trap. People are often promoted until they reach a level where they're no longer competent. A brilliant software engineer may be promoted to team lead, only to discover they're poor at managing people. A great middle manager may become a director and suddenly struggle with strategic vision. The paradox is that competence in one role doesn't guarantee competence in the next. Skills that make you successful as an individual contributor, deep expertise, attention to detail, personal accountability, aren't the same skills needed for leadership, where delegation, communication, and vision matter more. Recognizing the Peter Principle helps you make sense of confusing workplace dynamics. That manager who seems out of their depth may not be lazy or unintelligent. They may simply have been promoted beyond their natural skill set. For your own career, this principle suggests being thoughtful about promotions. Sometimes the best path is to deepen expertise rather than climb the ladder blindly. Not everyone is suited for leadership, and that's okay. True wisdom lies in matching your strengths to the right role. Office politics navigation. Many professionals pride themselves on avoiding office politics, as if disengagement is a badge of integrity. But ignoring politics doesn't make them disappear. It only makes you vulnerable. Every workplace has informal power structures. People who hold influence not because of their title, but because of their networks, relationships, or control over information. Understanding these dynamics is crucial. Who actually influences key decisions? Whose opinion does the boss trust most? Who acts as the gatekeeper of resources? These are often different from what the org chart suggests. Mapping this informal network helps you anticipate where opportunities and obstacles will arise. But navigating politics doesn't mean manipulation or backstabbing. It means building relationships strategically while maintaining ethical boundaries. Support colleagues openly, give credit generously, and look for allies across departments. Understand alliance patterns. Who consistently backs whom in meetings, who shares information freely, and who withholds it. By engaging with office politics in a principled way, you shift from being a passive victim of hidden power dynamics to an active participant in shaping your environment. Influence isn't inherently bad. It's the currency of collaboration. The key is using it with integrity. The fundamental attribution error at work. Workplace evaluations are riddled with cognitive bias, and one of the most damaging is the fundamental attribution error. When a colleague misses a deadline, you may assume they're lazy or disorganized. When you miss a deadline, You know it was because the requirements changed last minute or you were juggling too many urgent tasks. Successes and failures are judged through different lenses depending on whether they're yours or someone else's. This bias poisons team dynamics. It fosters resentment, unfair evaluations, and misplaced praise. A star performer may actually just be in a role perfectly suited to their strengths, while another employee struggling might simply be facing external constraints. Yet we interpret one as innately talented and the other as fundamentally flawed. The defense is cultivating fairness by deliberately considering situational factors when evaluating others and taking personal responsibility when evaluating yourself. Ask, what external circumstances might have influenced this outcome? This mindset doesn't excuse poor performance, but it creates balance and empathy. Over time, it builds a culture where people feel understood rather than misjudged, which directly improves collaboration and morale. Imposter syndrome versus Dunning-Kruger. In the workplace, confidence and competence don't always align. Two psychological phenomena illustrate this mismatch: imposter syndrome and the Dunning-Kruger effect. Imposter syndrome strikes competent professionals who feel like frauds despite evidence of their success. They worry they've fooled others into overestimating their abilities, and that one mistake will expose them. Ironically, this often afflicts high performers who hold themselves to very high standards. On the other end, the Dunning-Kruger effect describes those who are incompetent yet overly confident. Their limited knowledge blinds them to their limitations, so they overestimate their abilities. This can make them appear bold, decisive, and persuasive, sometimes even earning them promotions over more competent but modest colleagues. Recognizing both patterns helps calibrate self-assessment. If you doubt yourself constantly, remember that feelings aren't facts. Your track record matters more than your anxiety. If you encounter someone radiating confidence without evidence of results, beware that charisma may be masking incompetence. The healthiest balance is humble confidence, the ability to acknowledge what you know, admit what you don't, and remain open to growth. Microaggression recognition. Not all workplace hostility is overt. Some of the most damaging behaviors are subtle and cumulative. These are microaggressions. They might include constantly interrupting certain colleagues in meetings, assuming someone is junior because of their age, asking intrusive questions about someone's background, or excluding individuals from informal gatherings where networking happens. Each incident may seem small, even trivial, but together they send a consistent message of bias or disrespect. Over time, microaggressions create toxic work environments, erode trust, and drive talented people out of organizations. Recognizing microaggressions requires attentiveness to patterns. Did someone get cut off once? Or do they always get cut off? Was an assumption made randomly? Or does it always happen to people from a certain group? Documentation can be important, not for retaliation, but for clarity about what's happening. Defense involves addressing these issues constructively when possible. Sometimes it means speaking up in the moment. I'd like to hear them finish their thought. Other times, it means private conversations to clarify impact. Ultimately, the goal is not punishment, but creating an environment where everyone can contribute without hidden barriers. By understanding microaggressions, you protect yourself and help foster workplaces built on respect. The halo effect in performance reviews. Performance reviews should ideally provide a balanced, fair assessment of an employee's contributions. But the halo effect often distorts this process. One strong or weak trait ends up coloring the entire evaluation. If an employee gives charismatic presentations, they might be seen as a natural leader and rated highly in areas like teamwork, problem-solving, and initiative, even if their actual collaboration skills are lacking. Conversely, someone who's quiet, socially awkward, or dresses informally may be unfairly judged as less competent despite delivering exceptional technical results. This bias makes reviews subjective and unreliable. Leaders must be vigilant about separating competencies. Presentation ability is not the same as teamwork. Technical accuracy is not the same as leadership. The defense is to break evaluations into specific, observable categories and judge each independently. For employees, it means keeping records of achievements that show concrete results, hard evidence that helps counterbalance impressions shaped by the halo effect. Meeting dynamics and power. Meetings are more than just agenda-driven discussions. They are theater for power dynamics. Where people sit, who speaks first, and whose voices dominate reveal underlying hierarchies. A senior executive sitting at the head of the table signals authority. When certain individuals interrupt freely while others are silenced, it shows informal pecking orders. Sometimes, decisions are framed as open discussions, yet the outcome has already been predetermined by those with influence. Recognizing these patterns allows you to participate more strategically. Pay attention to who gets credited for ideas, who aligns with whom, and who is quietly steering the direction. If you're regularly sidelined in meetings, adjust tactics. Speak early before dominant voices set the tone. Build allies who can amplify your contributions, or request formal agenda roles that guarantee participation. Defense isn't just about being heard. It's about recognizing when meetings are being used as tools of control rather than collaboration. Credit theft and idea appropriation. In collaborative workplaces, the lines of ownership can blur, and opportunists exploit this ambiguity. Credit theft happens when someone rephrases your idea and gets recognition, dominates presentations of group work, or positions themselves as the visible face of collective achievements. Over time, this erodes trust and discourages genuine contribution. The defense begins with documentation. Keep dated notes, drafts, and communication that establish your role in developing ideas. But protection goes beyond evidence. Proactively share credit in group settings, building on what Sarah suggested, which establishes your integrity while subtly highlighting the origin of ideas. Communicate directly with decision-makers when appropriate, ensuring your contributions are visible to those who matter. Building coalition support also helps. When colleagues recognize your ideas consistently, it becomes harder for someone else to rewrite the narrative. The tall poppy syndrome. High performers sometimes find that excelling at work doesn't just attract admiration. It also attracts resentment. This is the tall poppy syndrome, when individuals who stand above are cut down through subtle or overt sabotage. Colleagues may minimize achievements, attribute success to favoritism, exclude you from social circles, or intensify scrutiny of your work. The underlying psychology is envy mixed with fear. Your success threatens their sense of competence or security. The wrong response is to shrink your ambitions or downplay your capabilities. Mediocrity won't protect you. Instead, the solution is strategic relationship building. Share credit generously, mentor colleagues, and frame your success as part of the team's success rather than your own. This reduces envy by making others feel included in your achievements. At the same time, maintain boundaries. Document your contributions so that when credit is due, you can claim it without apology. Navigating tall poppy syndrome requires balancing humility with assertiveness, ensuring your growth doesn't come at the cost of your relationships or your visibility. Workplace gaslighting. Perhaps the most insidious dynamic in toxic workplaces is professional gaslighting. This isn't just a disagreement. It's a calculated effort to make you question your memory, perceptions, or judgment. A manager might deny giving instructions they clearly provided, criticize you for misunderstanding vague directives, or insist you're too sensitive when raising legitimate concerns. Over time, these contradictions can destabilize even the most competent employee, leading them to doubt their abilities and lose confidence. Gaslighting is especially dangerous because it isolates. Targets begin to think the problem is with themselves rather than recognizing the manipulation. The defense involves two key steps: documentation and external validation. Keep detailed records of conversations, directives, and outcomes, emails, meeting notes, or follow-up summaries. This creates an objective trail that contradicts false claims. Equally important, seek validation from trusted peers, mentors, or even HR when appropriate. Hearing that others see the same patterns reinforces your reality and protects your confidence. Workplace gaslighting often targets high performers precisely because they pose a threat. Recognizing the tactic is the first step to resisting it. You're not imagining things. You're encountering a deliberate strategy of control. The kiss-up, kick-down pattern. Workplace hierarchies often conceal the darker side of certain personalities. Some individuals master the art of looking excellent to their superiors while mistreating those beneath them. This kiss-up, kick-down pattern allows them to build glowing reputations upward, deferential, respectful, and eager in the presence of executives, while creating toxic environments for their teams. Subordinates encounter dismissiveness, hostility, or outright bullying, but their complaints may be dismissed because the manager seems so professional to those above. These individuals thrive in organizations where performance is judged only from the top down. The solution many companies attempt is 360-degree feedback, which incorporates evaluations from peers and subordinates. Yet, even with such systems, the behavior often persists. Why? Because organizational hierarchies can reward short-term results more than long-term health. Recognizing this pattern is critical, both to avoid working under toxic leaders and to ensure you don't unconsciously adopt these dynamics yourself. True leadership means consistency, treating everyone with respect, regardless of their position. Boundary setting in professional contexts. Healthy workplaces require healthy boundaries. Yet many employees struggle to draw the line between professional dedication and personal exploitation. Without clear boundaries, you can quickly become the go-to person for every unreasonable request, late-night email, or task outside your role. The result isn't respect, it's burnout. Boundary setting involves clear communication. For instance, you might respond to after-hours messages with, "I'll take care of this first thing tomorrow morning." You clarify your role responsibilities so that work doesn't silently expand into areas you never agreed to cover. You decline requests that cross professional lines while still offering alternative solutions. Enforcing boundaries consistently is key. If you give in just this once, colleagues learn that your limits are negotiable. Boundaries aren't barriers, they're guidelines for respectful collaboration. Paradoxically, setting them strengthens relationships by reducing misunderstandings and creating mutual respect. Colleagues know what to expect from you, and you avoid building resentment through silent overwork. The promotion politics game. Many professionals assume promotions are purely about performance, deliver strong results, and advancement will follow. In reality, career progression is shaped by a blend of competence, visibility, and relationships. High performance is necessary, but not sufficient. If no one beyond your immediate team knows about your contributions, opportunities may bypass you. The politics of promotion don't need to be manipulative or unethical. Strategic navigation involves building alliances with peers, cultivating mentors, and ensuring decision-makers understand your impact. This doesn't mean bragging. It means communicating achievements effectively, framing them in terms of organizational goals. Volunteering for high-visibility projects, cross-functional teams, or initiatives tied to company priorities puts your work in the spotlight. It's easy to dismiss these dynamics as unfair, but ignoring them often results in stagnation while others climb the ladder. The key is balance. Play the promotion politics game without losing integrity. When your visibility is matched with genuine results, advancement feels both earned and sustainable. Workplace emotional labor. Every workplace requires some degree of emotional labor, managing your expressions and tone to create desired responses in others. Smiling at clients even when frustrated, appearing calm under pressure, or showing enthusiasm during tedious meetings all fall into this category. These behaviors smooth social interactions and maintain professional environments. But problems arise when emotional labor becomes excessive or one-sided. Some roles demand constant cheerfulness, empathy, or patience without acknowledging the personal toll. Over time, this drains energy and leads to emotional exhaustion. Worse, it can hide systemic issues. Employees forced to put on a happy face may suppress legitimate frustrations, preventing necessary organizational changes. Recognizing emotional labor as a form of effort, not just personality, is crucial. Leaders should factor it into workload expectations, offering support and breaks for roles that require constant emotional regulation. Employees should be mindful of when the demand crosses from professional courtesy into exploitation. Authentic workplaces respect not just the output of their workers, but the emotional energy sustaining it. The competence-warmth trade-off. Social psychology shows that people evaluate others primarily on two dimensions: competence and warmth. Competence is the ability to deliver results. Intelligence, skill, reliability. Warmth reflects perceived intentions, friendliness, empathy, and trustworthiness. Neither alone guarantees success. High competence without warmth often breeds resentment. The brilliant but cold professional may be admired for their skill, but distrusted as a potential rival or threat. Conversely, high warmth without competence may make someone well-liked, but overlooked for serious responsibility. Navigating this trade-off means calibrating your professional persona. If you're highly competent, make efforts to demonstrate warmth through collaboration, acknowledgement, and generosity. If you're naturally warm, build credibility by showcasing your expertise and delivering tangible results. The ideal professional is perceived as both capable and trustworthy. Importantly, these judgments happen quickly and unconsciously. First impressions often set the tone for how others interpret all future interactions. By understanding the competence-warmth balance, you can shape perceptions deliberately, ensuring your skills and intentions are both recognized and respected. Variable ratio reinforcement schedules. One of the most powerful psychological levers built into your phone is the same mechanism that drives people to keep pulling the lever on a slot machine: variable ratio reinforcement. This schedule of rewards doesn't give you something valuable every time you check. It gives you something occasionally and unpredictably. That unpredictability is what makes it so addictive. Think about how your notifications work. Sometimes it's a meaningful message from a friend. Sometimes it's a random promotional email. Sometimes there's nothing at all. The brain can't predict when the reward will appear, so it keeps checking compulsively. Social media platforms fine-tune this by spacing out likes, comments, or follows so that your brain never quite knows when to expect them. The same principle explains why people endlessly refresh their inboxes, news apps, or messaging platforms, because the next check might deliver something exciting. Psychologists discovered that variable ratio schedules create stronger and more persistent behaviors than consistent rewards. If you got a like every single time you posted, the novelty would wear off quickly. But when the likes come unpredictably, the anticipation alone keeps you engaged. Casinos rely on this principle to keep gamblers glued to machines for hours. Tech companies have simply digitized the slot machine and put it in your pocket. The defense against this trap is to disrupt the unpredictability. Batching notifications, turning them off, and checking only at specific times removes the slot machine element. Instead of dozens of unpredictable pulls of the lever, you create a predictable schedule. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but over time, it retrains your brain to stop expecting constant random rewards. The key is to regain control of when you engage, rather than letting the device dictate your behavior. The attention economy business model. There's a reason so many apps and services are free to download. You aren't the customer, you're the product. The real commodity being bought and sold is your attention. Every moment you spend scrolling, watching, liking, or clicking is data that can be packaged and sold to advertisers. The longer you stay on a platform, the more ads can be shown to you, and the more profit the company makes. This business model creates perverse incentives. Instead of designing platforms to enrich your life, companies design them to maximize your time spent on the app. Outrage, fear, and emotional intensity generate more engagement than calm, reasoned discussion, so algorithms prioritize extreme content. Infinite scroll, autoplay videos, and personalized feeds all exist to keep you from leaving. Even the placement of buttons, colors of icons, and timing of notifications are tested and optimized for maximum compulsion. The attention economy thrives when you're distracted, impulsive, and emotionally reactive. Platforms don't want you making intentional, well-thought-out choices. They want you hooked in cycles of clicking, sharing, and refreshing. When you realize that your attention is the battlefield, it becomes easier to see through these manipulations. Defending yourself requires reframing how you think about digital tools. Instead of asking, "Is this app free?" ask, "Who benefits from me using this, and how are they monetizing my attention?" Choosing platforms or tools that align with your goals, like paid services that don't rely on advertising revenue, can reduce the conflict of interest. More importantly, setting your own limits on usage puts you back in control. Remember, in the attention economy, your awareness is currency. Spend it intentionally, not automatically. Social comparison and mental health. Humans are wired to compare themselves with others. It's how our ancestors gauged status, belonging, and competition within a group. But social media supercharges this ancient instinct into something harmful. Platforms create an endless stream of highlight reels, where people share curated successes while hiding their struggles. The result is a distorted reality where everyone else seems happier, more attractive, more successful, and more fulfilled than you. This constant exposure to curated perfection fuels anxiety and depression. Studies show that heavy social media users often report lower life satisfaction and higher feelings of inadequacy. What makes the comparison trap particularly dangerous is that it operates unconsciously. You don't sit down intending to feel worse about yourself, but after scrolling for 20 minutes, you're left with the nagging sense that your own life isn't measuring up. The mechanism is subtle. Seeing a friend's vacation photos might make you feel like your own life is boring. Reading about someone's promotion can make you question your career progress. Even though you rationally know these are edited snapshots, your brain reacts emotionally as though you're falling behind. Platforms exploit this because comparison drives engagement. The more you feel compelled to catch up, the more you post, consume, and return for validation. Likes and comments then reinforce the cycle, giving temporary relief while deepening dependency on the platform for self-worth. Defending yourself means remembering that social media is not reality, it's performance. People curate what they show, hiding the mundane or painful aspects of their lives. Consciously reminding yourself that every feed is a highlight reel helps weaken the unconscious comparison reflex. Another strategy is to limit exposure to accounts that trigger negative comparisons and replace them with content that inspires, educates, or genuinely uplifts. Ultimately, mental health in the digital age depends on breaking the illusion that your value is determined by how you stack up against filtered versions of other people's lives. Real fulfillment comes from aligning your choices with your own values, not chasing an endless ladder of comparison.